History buffs of Reddit, what is one of the most fascinating stories you've learned that no one seems to talk about and can't be found in textbooks? Something I read long ago on Reddit and have saved to my mostly dead other username. During World War II, the Japanese outfitted special planes. Some were designed to be launched from submarines with enough range to reach the west coast of the United States. The goal was to use incendiary bombs to start wildfires in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. One pilot, Nobuo Fujita, successfully dropped his bombs over the forest near Brookings, Oregon. Fortunately, a storm the night before had dampened the forest, and the fire started by Fujita's bomb was quickly controlled by the Forest Service. 18 years later, in 1962, Fujita returned to Brookings. He brought with him his family's heirloom, a katana that was over 400 years old. Fujita apologized to the townspeople for his actions during the war and revealed that, if the townspeople demanded it, he would ceremoniously kill himself, commit seppuku, with the sword to make reparations for his actions. The townspeople would have none of it. Fujita was made an honorary citizen of the town and returned to visit it several times during his life, including one trip to plant trees in the forest he had bombed decades before. After his death in 1997, his daughter returned to Brookings and scattered some of his ashes there. The Fujita family katana is on display in Brookings after being given to the town by Fujita as a token of friendship. Oh my god. It just goes to show that the people sent to bomb other countries are only trying to serve their country. He offered to kill himself to make retributions with people he failed to kill. Say what you want about the Japanese, but they really value their honor. I may not be too much of a history buff, but I really like the story of Leo Major. Leo was a Canadian soldier serving in WW2. He was assigned to the division in charge of liberating the Netherlands. One day in the summer of 1944, he was alone on reconnaissance duty when he saw two German soldiers walking nearby. He killed one and captured the other, then captured their commanding officer and an entire German garrison. After killing a couple more, he came under fire from other German soldiers and Jewett kept walking. He single-handedly captured 93 German soldiers. In February of 1945, a truck Leo was in hit a landmine. He broke his back, a few ribs, and both ankles, and was told he would be discharged. Leo couldn't give enough fucks, however, and a week later he snuck out of the field hospital he was in and stayed with a Dutch family. After getting better he made it back into his battalion and volunteered to do reconnaissance of the city of Zwolle. Once he departed, he decided to take the city himself. He convinced a German soldier to relay a message back to the German army, then through the night, ran around the town making all the noise he could. He shot bullets, threw grenades, captured German soldiers, burned down the Gestapo, and cleaned out the SS building in Zwolle. His tactics were so effective he convinced the German army that the entire Canadian army was invading the town. So by the morning the town was free of Germans and the Canadian army just marched in. He has a street named after him in that town now. Diarrhea was so widespread and common in the 19th century that people would develop opium habits because opium makes you constipated. Edit. Well, that escalated quickly. As for the exact diseases and reasons that people had diarrhea, I can only say that the 19th century was gross and nobody knew proper sanitary practices. I'm glad you guys all enjoy debating Imodium until Imodium is made from opiates. If you want to learn more about opium, diarrhea or the combination of the two, then Google it, because I'm busy and Google has better resources than I. Thanks for upvoting everyone. I've told this story before, but it never fails to amuse me. Strap in, boys and girls, it's time to learn about that time in pre-revolutionary France where bleeding from Uranus was a fashion statement. In early 1685, King Louis XIV of France developed a fistula, a small channel near his anus, resulting in great pain. Fistulas, much like the Wu-Tang Clan, ain't nothing to fuck with. Eventually the pain got so bad that he couldn't ride a horse, sit for long periods, which is kind of important when you're a king, or even make a bowel movement without regretting it immensely. The normal remedies were applied, enemas and poultices from morning until night, with zero effect. Louis decided, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go down the surgical route. Unfortunately for Louis, at the time there was no surgical route. He hired a surgeon barber named Charles Francois Felix and asked him to fix him. Not entirely stupid and not willing to risk fucking up a novel surgery on the King of France, Felix requested 6 months to practice, which he did on prisoners. Live prisoners. Live healthy prisoners, sometimes as many as 4 a day, in an era where antiseptics and anesthetics didn't exist. The success rates were about as you'd imagine, although at least some of the prisoners survived, and eventually Felix felt confident enough to perform the surgery on the king. And it worked. Within 3 months, the king was riding his horse like nothing had happened, and Felix was the talk of the town. People were desperate to emulate the king so badly that people who were entirely healthy would pay Felix to perform the surgery on them, and those less willing to suffer, or at least, less willing to pay, would fake having the surgery, wearing bandages known as La Royale to mimic the king, and pretend that they too were cool and with it, even though with it meant suffering from a painful condition of the anus. 1014 AD, after defeating a large Bulgarian army at the Battle of Cleidion, Byzantine Emperor Basil II had 99 of every 100 prisoners blinded, leaving each 100th man with one eye, so that he could lead his comrades home. Upon seeing his thousands of blinded soldiers, the Bulgarian emperor reportedly died of a heart attack. Basil II was known thereafter as Basil Bulgaslayer. The May incident in World War II. American submarines were very good at getting away from Japanese surface ships. This was because the Japanese thought American submarines could only reach a much shallower depth than they actually could, and they never set their depth charges to these deeper depths. Congressman Andrew May decided it would be a good idea to hold a press conference announcing this fact. From then on, the Japanese set their depth charges to these deeper depths. Vice Admiral Charles A. Lockwood, commander of the US submarine fleet in the Pacific, estimated that May's security breach cost the United States Navy as many as 10 submarines and 800 crewmen killed in action. He said, "I hear Congressman May said the Jap depth charges are not set deep enough. He would be pleased to know that the Japs set them deeper now. Loose lips sink ships." Similar thing happened in the Falklands War. The Argentines were attacking British ships at extremely low altitude to evade their missile defenses. Their bombs, however, were set such they had no time to arm before they struck their target, meaning quite a few British warships escaped with unexploded bombs on board. The BBC decided it would be helpful to broadcast this fact to the entire world, something the Royal Navy did not particularly appreciate. Inexplicably, the Argentines failed to notice this and did nothing about it. In World War II, there was a Spanish spy named Joan Pujol Garcia who approached the Allies to work for them. When they refused, he approached the Nazis, and they accepted him, giving him the codename Erebel. Once he earned credentials working as a Nazi spy, he approached the Allies again, this time getting a job as a double agent, codenamed Garbo. This is where it gets unbelievable. He fed the Germans a combination of misinformation, true but useless information, and high-value information that always got to the Germans just a little too late. He even started a spy network consisting of 27 sub-agents of his own. Keep in mind that not a single one of these sub-agents existed. They were completely imaginary, but regardless, he submitted expense reports for them and had the Nazis giving him money to pay their salaries. At one point, when he had to explain why some high-value information got to the Germans late, he told them that one of his spies had died. He actually got the Germans to pay the imaginary spy's imaginary wife a very real pension for her loss. Not only did his false information get the Nazis to waste millions of dollars, but he was also instrumental in convincing the Nazis that the attacks on D-Day were just a diversion and the real attack was yet to come, keeping vital German resources away from the front lines. He is one of the only people to ever get an Iron Cross from the Germans, which required Hitler's personal authorization, since he wasn't a soldier, and an MBE from King George VI. George Washington was an amazing man, but very proper and stern, but also revered by all. But one guy thought it was perhaps overblown, and was talking smack, that George wasn't all that, or inspiring in person. Gouverneur Morris thought that it couldn't be that intimidating meeting George Washington, so Alexander Hamilton made him a bet. If he would, upon meeting the general, clap him on the shoulder and say, "My dear general, how happy I'm to see you look so well," which would be the modern equivalent of saying, "Hey Georgie boy, how they hanging?" Hamilton would buy an expensive dinner for him and 12 of his friends. Well, Governor Morris did and won the bet. But Washington immediately removed Morris's hand from his shoulder, stepped away, and zed Morris with an angry frown until the trespasser retreated in confusion. Hamilton paid up, yet at the dinner Morris declared, "I have won the bet, but paid dearly for it, and nothing could induce me to repeat it." The dude could literally end you with a stare. I know so much random history trivia, but of course at this moment, I can't think of anything truly fascinating. Not really fascinating, but funny, is the Lion of Gripsholm Castle. As a part of some diplomatic back and forths, Frederick I of Sweden received a lion from the ruler of Algeria. It was now up to the royal taxidermist to make sure the lion was restored to its former glory. During the 1730s, however, not a great deal of Swedes had ever actually seen a lion. The only real thing he had to go on was the coinage which showed lions in profile. The result? Yeah. When Philip of Macedon had ravaged many Greek city-states, things were looking bad for Greece. He then turned his attention to Sparta, sending the doomed state a letter that read, "You are advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city." The Spartans sent back a rather to-the-point reply, "If." The story of the Bloody Benders, a family of serial killers in southeast Kansas in the 1870s. They let travelers stay and eat at their home, for a fee, of course, and would kill them during dinner, steal anything of value that the travelers had with them, and bury the bodies in the yard. It makes sense why the Benders aren't included in textbooks, but other famous criminals are often included, and even become folk heroes. Jesse James is a prime example.